Avani.
Good morning, Bede. I mean, good evening.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Good. Now, very good. So, we are two students of Vedanta. I'm a student of Swami Atma Prakashananda, and I'm studying in India with Swami Dayananda. And I'd like to introduce Avani. She can introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Avani, and I have studied with Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And I'm delighted to take part in this video series discussing Vedanta.
Okay. Now, what I wanted to bring up today was I just want to. We've all heard about the fact that there's this ocean of samsara, and what we mean by the ocean of samsara is a pervasion of a feeling, a feeling that sometimes we're not even aware of, but a feeling of deep self-dissatisfaction, either in the form of some kind of unhappiness, just not feeling right in ourselves, or tremendous self-criticism. I'm not good enough, I should be like this, I should be like that, or whatever, right? And this deep sense of self-dissatisfaction drives us to become dependent on people and things that give us the experience of satisfaction, but this satisfaction is reasonably momentary, and often the experience won't hold up. And then we're thrust back into this feeling of self-dissatisfaction. So this dependence on people and things for our happiness, this is what we mean by samsara, and it regulates and governs most of human life. Now, they also talk about a raft that takes us across this ocean.
Right. Can I stop you there? I was just thinking that some people would say this is quite a pessimistic or negative view of the human personality, of life itself, that our core experience is dissatisfaction.
Yeah, that's right. Now that's you see, what Vedanta does is, on one hand, it says our core experience of ourselves, good word, is one of self-dissatisfaction, but the reality actually isn't. In fact, the reality of ourselves is actually complete satisfaction, actually. That's not dependent on people and things. So in one sense, it can appear very, very negative, but it's always in the light of this other. So if we distinguish between our experience of ourselves, which we tend to take to be true.
Right, always, yes.
Yeah. And the reality of what we are. Okay? So we have this thing, the ocean of samsara, that we're drowning in. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that we're aware that we're drowning. We're not aware that we're drowning in it, but when our support system, the people and things that we use to protect us against this self-dissatisfaction, when people die, when they treat us badly, when we find that we're making mistakes and we feel self-hating, what happens is when those defense mechanisms, in a sense, that these people and things that we use personally to have an experience of security, which isn't security, but an experience of it, when they no longer hold up, suddenly what happens is we find ourselves being aware of that the experience is a revelation of what our real condition is when things aren't going well. When things are so-called going well, we can say, well, everything's fine with me, I'm pretty cool, I'm my own person, all of that kind of thing. However, it's a rather fragile security and a rather fragile happiness because it's always shifting around.
Right, but it seems like we all invest a lot in upholding this facade, if you will, that, well, there is nothing really wrong with me because I have X, Y, and Z. I have my family, I've got my possessions, I've got, X amount of experience in my life. And so there's never really a point in time where people say, well, this one experience has made me realize that, none of this, no person or no thing is going to make me permanently happy. It seems like we're always struggling to uphold the facade that, yes, X, Y, and Z will make me happy.
Yes, we're
Right? Am I
trying.
understanding?
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to be, and you see, it's true. There is nothing wrong with me or with you, but we are in a condition of ignorance,
Mhm.
which produces the experience of ourselves as a suffering person when things don't go our way. So when things don't go our way, we're thrust back into the reality or the experience of being a suffering person. And then we strive again to do something about this suffering. Either have another relationship, we take drugs, we you know what I mean, we get involved with entertainment, whatever it happens to be. Our culture provides us with many things that can ward off this deep feeling of self-dissatisfaction, which is in the Vedantic teaching, this self-dissatisfaction is not a reality, it's a condition. It's an experience, which is great that it's an experience because experiences can go away. If it was our reality, we'd be in trouble, big trouble. Okay.
So let me just recap a little bit. So it's less about building up an image of ourselves, and more about escaping from the sense of from my experience of suffering.
Yes, escaping from my experience of myself as a dissatisfied, unhappy, deficient person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you see,
so every endeavor, I mean, some people would say, well, how can you say that every endeavor, like, did Mother Teresa, was she trying to escape some sort of experience of suffering by helping the, millions of people, so-called selfless people like Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi? Was he trying to escape a sense of suffering? Is this true of every endeavor we take?
well, I would say that that in terms of there is within human beings an ethical striving, which can come into operation, but normally the game played is pleasure and security.
Right. Okay.
So, but basically the idea that you see, what happens is that the experience of being a person who's defective, for example, most people are not conscious of. But if you noticed, how often have you seen people around you who kind of like to, this dire need for approval, to look good, to present yourself in a wonderful way so that people will approve of you? How prevalent do you think that is in our culture?
Oh, I mean, I think it drives everyone.
Yes, they have a word called ubiquitous. It's a funny word. It means all over the place. So that, you see, but when the person's engaged in that, and if they feel they're engaging in a social performance where that's working, where they actually are impressing or getting the approval of others, they will then have the experience of being acceptable and the experience of being so-called happy. But what happens when people don't give you the approval, or what happens when they withdraw the approval, or they reject you, or they act in ways that you don't like? What happens to that feeling of being happy and security? What happens to that?
I mean, it vanishes, like in a split second. It goes away,
and then suddenly,
often at a shock to oneself too. Like, oh my God, I thought I was this wonderful person, and one doesn't realize that one is actually internalizing someone else's view of oneself. And when that person's view changes, all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm not the person I thought I was, because my partner or my friend or my child doesn't think I'm so great.
Yes, and you see, the interesting thing about, from a Vedanic point of view, the idea of yourself that you want to be with other people, that's a fiction. And the idea that you think you are because you're not that is also a fiction. It's a double whammy. But what it does teach us is that when this happens, when suddenly whenever we feel unhappy, miserable, inferior, insecure, envious, sad, hostile, all of these various forms you could call unhappiness or self-dissatisfaction, we're a self that we're not satisfied with. That's what self-dissatisfaction means. I am this, and I really don't want this. I just don't like being like this. I'm miserable, right? Well, so what happens is that then there's a tremendous striving to get out of it. Now, here's the problem, though. There's a tremendous barrier against knowing or being aware of the fact that when things don't go our way and things are not to our liking, or people say and do things we don't like, and then suddenly we find ourselves being unhappy, what happens is that we don't see this as a revelation of samsara. It's called samsara in Vedanta. We don't see it's a revelation of this desperate attempt to use people and things to defend ourselves against this self-dissatisfaction. And you see, it's very much...
Well, how could we? I mean, how could we think of ourselves as using people? You know?
Well, yes. I don't mean that in a sort of a moral sense, but what happens is we depend upon people being in a certain way in relation to us to feel happy, and we depend upon certain circumstances in order to be happy in ourselves. So we seek a sense of happiness through other people and things. Now, this is considered the fundamental condition that we as human beings are enclosed in. Now, it's a condition, it's not a reality. It's an experience, not a reality, thank goodness. Now, but what happens is, why we hardly ever are aware that the condition is mine, that is located with me, is because when people and things don't do what or are not like we want them to be, and we experience pain, we think the person or the condition is the one causing us the pain. You see, we blame. We say, I'm upset because of this. So instead of seeing, now it's very important in Vedanta, this point here, instead of seeing all my misery and pain and all the various forms that it has as a revelation of my samsaric condition, a revelation that I am drowning in this condition, and even when I'm moving out towards other people to try and get the approval I want, or to get circumstances external to me to make myself happy, that's also drowning, even though it renders an experience of being happier, experience, not a reality. If it was the reality I'm happy, that won't change. Experiences come and go. So any form of happiness that comes, it's a rule in Vedanta, is going to go away. So we put our hope and everything else to be secure and happy in ourselves. We put our hope in people and things in order for us to do, and we don't even know we do that, actually.
Right. It seems like it's so unconscious and so habitual, and we never realize, well, you know, things are transitory. Every experience is transitory and transient, and things begin and end. But we don't, we never seem to realize that things will not last,
yes,
as we think they will. In a moment of happiness, we think, oh boy, you know, this could last forever.
Yes, that's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope. And then when it doesn't, we seek it, you know, again and again and again. That's
right. And here's the problem. You see, we think that the world or people can give us happiness. The problem is that implicit in that is that if they can give us happiness, they can also take it away. We have the experience of conditions and people taking away our happiness.
Right.
You see, we actually have that as an experience.
But wouldn't some people say that that actually, I mean, it seems like some people would realize that it's actually not other people and things, but it's my own self, my own karma, for example. If you bring in the law of karma, it's the own, you know, fruits of my own actions that have caused this unhappiness. So really the onus is on oneself, and one is responsible for one.
We won't go into karma so much right now, but the fact of the matter is, let's say, for example, you do something I don't like.
Right.
And then suddenly, straight after that, I'm feeling unhappy. Now, my teacher said a very interesting thing to me when I first met her. She said, people and things don't hurt you. They're only instrumental in revealing a pain or an unhappiness that's already here. Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem. You see, Vedanta basically says is that we attempt to find happiness where it's not. You see, we think if happiness is found in good relationships, then there should be happiness every time we have a relationship. Have you found that to be true?
No.
No. So obviously happiness.
But then, but if I can just, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But then one thinks, well, X, Y, and Z are having wonderful relationships. Look at this married couple. They met in high school. They're high school sweethearts.
Yes.
They seem to be happy forever. They have lovely grandchildren.
Yes.
They're retired. So one always thinks that maybe I didn't get it right. That some people would say that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a common one. Now, what that's based on is this. People can be having the experience of being happy. And they can actually maintain that experience reasonably well, given certain circumstances. Mm-hmm. But it's an experience, it's not a reality. Because as soon as, you see, if I suddenly said that you're just a lowlife, Avani, you're just, a pathetic woman. Now, when people say things like that, if they say it overtly or they do it via non-verbal communication, they say the same thing, that kind of hurts more. But when they do that, you see, if I said to you, you are a pink elephant, an ugly pink elephant, what would happen? Nothing would happen.
Right.
Because there's nothing in you that says, I'm a lousy pink elephant. But in our culture, we've got lots of notions about being a loser and about being, this and that. So when people say to us, you're a proper such and such,
right,
we really feel it because that's what also we feel. You see,
right, exactly.
if we really knew, you see, the thing about what Vedanta says is that all our endeavors is to actually experience happiness and fullness. And we know what the experience of happiness is a feeling of contentment and completeness in terms of experience. Now, all that Vedanta says is that the happiness that you are seeking, this fullness that you're seeking, actually is your nature. That's the fundamental revelation of Vedanta, is that the very happiness that you're seeking is actually what you actually are. You see,
what a relief.
It is a relief. Well, that's right. The important point, though, is to be able to actually be able to see that as a fact, appreciate that as a fact.
But why wouldn't we want to experience that if we're after experience anyway? And experience is, we live in our bodies and we relate to ourselves and with the world through experience. So what's, why is it that we want to make this a reality rather than experience? What's the difference between the two?
What's the difference is that what happens is that we are convinced that the happiness we're seeking is other than ourselves. It's people or experiences other than ourselves. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're born into this world, one fact we know, we've got half knowledge of what we know that we are.
Right.
What Vedanta says is that we don't know what we are. But we've come to conclusions about what we are. I'm magnificent, I'm this, I'm that. We've got self-descriptions concerning ourselves. We've got self-descriptions.
Based on experience rather than our understanding of reality.
Based on experience, yeah. So let's say, for example, someone that you really like says that I really like you. Suddenly you'll go, oh, I am just so fantastic right now. So I'll be looking at myself in a good way. The next moment when they reject you, no, that won't be happening. So both of those experiences, see, any notion we have of ourselves, according to Vedanta, is actually a fiction. It's erroneous. Because what happens is we make a picture of ourselves, first of all. I'm a magnificent, lovely person, or I'm a low-life loser.
Right.
we then look at that picture and we go, oh my God, that's what I'm like. So we take the notion to be ourself.
Right.
But fundamentally, like what you said, the very first thing that needs to be clearly understood is the condition that we're caught in. Because Vedanta is a solution to that precise condition. It doesn't deal with anything else. And
right. So we don't understand the condition. If we don't fully appreciate the condition, then we will just keep on seeking happiness in people and things without any hope to, get rid of that self-dissatisfaction.
No, we'll continually try the impossible, which is, do you remember as a kid you tried to make the sandcastle when the tide was coming in?
Yes.
And you keep doing it, it comes. It's like that. You know that Greek god? Who was the Greek god that rolled that boulder up the hill? Who was he? Sisyphus or
Sisyphus.
Sisyphus, right? So here he is, he's moving it up, he's got this big boulder, he goes, oh my goodness, I'm nearly at the top now, I'm going to be happy at long last, it's going to happen. And what happens?
Yeah, it just, he has to do it again. He just does it again and again. He's cursed to do it.
Now that's what we mean by samsara. It just goes around and around and around and around. And there's no, and you see, the other main point is that we have an experience of ourselves as a person who's miserable and a bit of a low life and pathetic and no good, or an experience of ourselves that we're wonderful and terrific. But the problem is that, and we think that the problem is that the solution is being wonderful and terrific.
Right, the experience of being that.
That's it, because it's an experience.
The happy joy.
The happy me that I can look at in terms of a picture and go, oh my God, am I good? Am I good? Right. So I'm looking
all
good.
The selfies that people are taking with their
exactly. I'm looking good in my own eyes and the eyes of other people. And we consider happiness this misery that happens when we can't be like that. And the problem is that we're trying to solve a problem. We're trying to solve an experience that isn't true. It isn't real. It's an experience, but we take it to be real. And then what we do is we try and solve it. And the picture they give, or the analogy they give, is that, and it's a dark room, slightly light, and there's a rope in the corner, and we take the rope to be a snake. And then we get busy trying to fix the snake. Either kill the snake, fighting with the snake, ignoring the snake, becoming brave in relation to the snake. All of these things, but all those efforts are trying to get rid of an experience that we take to be true.
Right, so we take ourselves to be just not really worthy, and limited in so many ways.
Yes.
And just not good enough. Let's just say, I just don't like myself.
Yes.
Or we just don't like ourselves.
No, we don't.
And that, according to Vedanta, you're saying is a false notion. It's not the reality.
It's a self-description.
Right.
It's a self-description. So I make a description about myself. Does that make sense? When people feel sorry for themselves, they're sitting by themselves and then they're creating a picture and a story about what I'm like, and they go, oh, I'm like that. Oh. And it's we're not saying it's not, it is incredibly painful. We're not saying it's not painful. It is suffering.
Right.
Now, but the solution, you see, this is the point, the solution. Here we are, we're in this ocean of samsara.
Right.
Drowning, and we get evidence of this. We get evidence of this condition every day. Every time we feel slightly bored, we feel irritated, we find ourselves being unhappy in various ways. In fact, human unhappiness is all over the place, actually. But so we're having the experience of unhappiness. Now,
but would people say, well, that's just normal? I mean, I have,
yep.
Life is full of pleasure and pain, and it's a mixed bag, and so I'm relatively happy. I mean, I know, I've met people, and who
Mhm.
are relatively happy, you know, who don't seek the counsel of any sort of Vedanta or any other spirituality or self-help, because, you know, they're relatively happy. And
They've got their setup
yeah,
defends themselves against the self-dissatisfaction enough, and then they create a notion about themselves, particularly when they compare themselves with others, because they've got to do this, because it's very important to actually avoid confronting this fact. And then they go, I'm not like these other people. I'm a happy person. And so even the notion I'm a happy person, you see. So
right.
what we're looking at here is this, is that we're drowning in this ocean of samsara and we need a raft. Now, Vedanta says what the raft is. This is what the raft is. There is a raft which actually takes you across this ocean, and it's a very narrow raft. It's a very, of all the things you can get in the world, it's a very specific narrow raft. Now, let's say I'm facing that snake. I'm facing the snake. I'm doing that, and I'm scared, and I'm afraid, and I'm trying to get rid of it. I've been trying to get rid of it for years. But because it's not true, it's an experience. You can never get rid of something that's not true. But let's imagine that for whatever reason, I could come to see clearly that I can recognize the rope. Now, in the very recognition, in the seeing, in the actual seeing that this is a rope, what happens to this whole experience of being a snake and all my painful experiences of struggling with it, fighting with it, trying to get rid of it? What happens to that?
It just drops away, it falls away.
It becomes what it wasn't. It's a little bit like if you believe that 4 and 4 is 5. When you find out that 4 and 4 is 8, what happens is the 4 and 4 is 5 disappears because it didn't exist in the first place, did it?
Right.
It existed.
Like when you leave your glasses like on top of your head or something, or you know, and you're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? How, you know, it's my only pair of glasses. How am I gonna see? And then they're right here. So all of that anxiety and worry and frustration that, you know, accompanies the so-called or seeming loss of glasses, that just goes away instantaneously.
Right. So the experience of loss, because it was never a reality. You hadn't lost your glasses, but you were having the experience as though it's true. We're not denying the experience of human pain. We're not going to say, it's just only experience. No. The reason that Vedanta is so important is that we have this common human problem of samsara. I sometimes pronounce that wrong. It's an Australian slang thing. But samsara, and what happens is that the solution to this thing is a way of seeing in which you see what is true or what is real. So what we're going to talk about in the next little clip. So we have two things. We're drowning in samsara, and we have this raft, which is knowledge, which is seeing. And I don't mean knowledge but like information and all that stuff. I'm talking about a way of seeing where we recognize what is true, and then we can also abide in that recognition once we've seen it anytime we wish. That's what we're going to be talking about as we go on.
Okay, so just to recap, the basic human experience is of one of self-dissatisfaction. Despite the fact that we try to escape this experience of self-dissatisfaction, we always end up in the same place, not liking ourselves and being dependent on people and things and conditions to make us happy. So that recognition that actually my experience is one of self-dissatisfaction is important, but it also is a recognition of the Vedantic idea of samsara, that it is it's actually, am I so far?
We just cut off. Can you say that again, because we cut off somehow?
Oh, sure. So the recognition of the self-dissatisfaction is the recognition that I'm drowning in samsara. So it's not just a concept, this idea of samsara. It's actually my experience that whatever I do, I am at the core dissatisfied with myself and dependent on people and things and places and experiences to make me happy.
Yes. Now, one point I'd say is this experience of samsara is the yo-yo, feeling completely miserable about myself and feeling great about myself. It's the only reason I feel so great about myself is that I feel I've actually finally got rid of the bad feeling. So it's kind of like a yo-yo life. So, you know, like it's a yo-yo life. And the story is that if I don't know that I have a condition, if I am not aware of the fact that I'm caught in this samsaric condition, I will not value the raft. I won't reach for the raft. You see?
Why would you? Yeah.
Why would I? And one of the problems, which we will go on to next time, one of the first things that occurs is that there is a philosophy of blame that stops me from seeing the actual fact that I am continually caught in this condition that is located with me,
Right.
this located with who I think that I am. It's located with me, not with other people in the world. Okay, well, thank you very much for this. And
Thank you so much.
that's all right.
Wonderful.
And we'll catch up next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Bye.